Okay, I'm back. I found it. I actually found something else too that I had missed. So let's talk about both of them and how that impacts the game. The first thing is that naval gunfire, airstrikes, and artillery points are separate. I explained, well actually I didn't explain artillery points, but you get those as part of your reinforcement. And I'll show you real quick. In the reinforcement chart, you can see here on game turn 6, I'm trying to hold several things at once, we're going to get 7 points of 5th Division artillery. And then here you get 2 points of 4th Division artillery on game turn 5. So we're going to start getting artillery of our own, and we can pound the crap out of them with it. But we also get naval gunfire and airstrikes. And we get 1 at the start of every game day. That's not game turn. So remember, the first 7 turns is 1 day. Or actually, first 6 turns is 1 day. So we're going to get 1 on turn 1, and then we don't get another one until turn 7. At least according to this rule. Now, scenario 1 does have bonus naval guns that we're awarded. We're doing scenario 6, but scenario 6 says use scenario 1's setup rules. So I did just put a question on Board Game Geek because it's very important that we have this answer. But I'm going to play that we're going to use the scenario 1 rules because previous D-Day games always had a basic game and an extended game. And so this scenario 1 is the basic game, if you will. And there was never a difference, right? You always just played the basic game full. And then at the end, you just kept going into the extended game. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to use the basic game special rules. And what that rule is that on game turn 2 and 5, we're going to get another naval gun point and airstrike point. Okay, so here's the key thing. I mean, the strength values, we're going to have to probably look this up several times. But the big thing is we can never have more than 2. So we got to use these suckers. We're at 1. And I looked and I don't see any tokens to track these. So I have here an aircraft carrier for our airstrike and a battleship here for our naval gunfire. They can never be more than 2. So it's either going to be 0, 1, or 2. So it doesn't matter that they're maybe a little bit too big. But that's going to track our naval and gunfire. Now, to the question at hand, what I want to show you is page 29. It's nestled here as number C. The first time a U.S. unit enters the field of fire of a Japanese position group. That's a key thing. That's going to answer our Scooby-Doo question here. And that position group is unoccupied. You draw a card. And if you match the color shown, then it gets... a Japanese unit from the reserve pool is immediately placed there. So even though it was empty, it's going to get something the moment you start approaching it and you get in its field of fire. And then, of course, any field of fire effects are immediately in play. So there's no such thing as approaching something empty and trying to get there before the Japanese figure it out. Now, if you draw the card and you don't match the card, you're fine. I know it doesn't say it here, but I know for a fact that when you're talking about black positions, the way those ones work is you draw a card, and if you get a color that's within 3 spaces of that black position, then the black position gets reinforced. I don't think that's too much of an issue because every black position in the game is getting something. But I think there might be a few that are empty. I highly doubt it. If we sat down and calculated it out, I think they all already have units. But anyways, that's how that works. Now, I thought maybe this would apply to us, and I'll show you why. We are now within their field of fire for both purple and red. But it said position group, and it has to be unoccupied. See, we have 1 unit in this position group, and see this little line that connects them? That means that it's a position group. So it is occupied. It has a unit already in it, and so we do not draw a card for either of these situations. So we're safe. The first time I see us doing that rule will be here. So if we ever get into this red field of fire, we would have to draw a card and see if it gets a reinforcement. Now, one thing that's nebulous in the rules is how often do I do that? And I think is it every time somebody goes in his field of fire? I mean, I think as soon as I enter his field of fire, I check it. I check it once. If it doesn't happen, then I'm free and clear. I don't think it happens if I keep moving closer to it or anything like that. It's a little nebulous. It doesn't explain that part, but it just says that if any unit enters its field of fire. So I think if I move 3 units into its field of fire, I'll have to check it 3 times. But as long as I only enter it with 1 unit and I pass, if I'm careful of not entering anybody else, then I can go ahead and run up and take it. That's my interpretation. If anybody knows better, let me know. The one thing I think I want to point out is that the rulebook, it's okay. I'm very upset with the number of grammatical and mistakes it has. I cannot express enough that's not cool. But in terms of, is this a complete game? Yes, it is a complete game. It's just these little caveats and, well, what about this kind of scenario? That's where it gets a little flaky. Like in this situation, it's a little flaky, but I don't want to, we're going to be able to play a complete game. It's just that from time to time, we're going to have to debate about what this rule really means. And that's what I'm trying to explain. And I hope that I can at least get you to a point where you can play this game and not feel intimidated by it and feel like you have a good command of what you're supposed to do. So anyways, let's keep going. And we are landing here. We have a green. And I don't think there's a green here. So we finally don't take any hits. So we do get to land, and of course, I can't look at the damn board. I have to go look over here. Purple, brown, purple, brown. So purple pride. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and land 2 of our units there with the headquarters, and then 1 unit there. And there was no drift. I just had to go check. Okay, next one is a green, and there is a green on this one. So it's no drift, and it's a green circle. So whoever the circle is taking a hit. So let me grab a step loss. Okay, so he takes a hit, and let's land. I'm going to land my full strength here, and then the hit guy over there. I'm still staggering just like I did every other time. And now the last box. And I don't think blue 2 had anybody in it. No, it did not. All right, so it's a blue circle. And I think blue, oh, blue was disrupted. This guy did not take a hit. Blue was disrupted. I hope everybody caught that. Blue is disrupted, so they're not able to project fire onto the beach. So I got to look at the previous one now. It was green and green the last 2 times. So actually the last time was green, which is not disrupted. So my apologies. It wasn't blue. It was green. Okay. Blue is disrupted, so we don't take a damage here. That's the good news. Okay, so then I'm looking at the... so this is blue-green, blue-green. Both of these intense fire, blue-green, blue-green. So we're going to go ahead and land a full strength of units there. And then a full strength of units there with their headquarters. And you can see that these are 2 different... I want to make sure I get this right. 2 different battalions, but they're both of the 25th Regiment. This game, unlike all the others, in the other games, you could just move units anywhere, and as long as they were in the range of 1 HQ, they were fine. This game, it is very important that you keep your battalions together, and your regiments even together. So if you're going to go east with a particular group, you want your whole set of battalions, and maybe even the entire regiment to go that way. And if you're going to go take Mount Suribachi, that's going to be a particular regiment. It'd be interesting. I may have to look up historically who did go towards Suribachi and see if we can try to match what happened historically. I'm sure this game is designed to allow that. Now, we have 2 more units. If we land them, we're going to be disrupted. So you can see I was actually hoping we would get a drift, but we didn't. So I'm not going to land those units. They're going to stay there and potentially take fire the next round. And they're going to both be circles. So I'm going to take our chance with that. And so that ends the very first turn or very first phase of the game. So then we go to the event phase, but it doesn't start until game turn 2. So now we go to the Japanese fire phase. And so, like it says, we're going to draw a fire card and remove disruption if eligible. And I'll explain how that works right now. And yes, I'm not going to sidetrack us into a long discussion. We're going to go. Okay, so here's their card. We just draw 1 card for all the Japanese phase. And we only look here. That's all we do. We ignore the letters until day 2. So basically this first scenario that we're doing, I mean, we're doing scenario 6, but part of scenario 6 is we start with scenario 1, right? Scenario 1 is the first 6 turns. The first 6 turns of the game, we don't have to worry about command, and we don't worry about the letters at all. This doesn't happen until turn 7. So all we do is you look at this. This is a purple, a green, but we do worry about that. That's a tank symbol. The good news is we don't have any tanks on the beach, so no tanks are going to get hit. Tanks can get hit even without this symbol, but I'll explain it more when we actually have a situation that calls for it. Now this little black bar says that black goes instead of them to do the R action. But since there is no R action, we ignore that for now. But that black bar is it's like a Trump priority, not our president, but the trumping the priority of the R. Okay, so purple fires. And so we have to look and see where is purple projecting field of fire onto anything. And I don't think purple is... Oh, when you're doing the Japanese fire phase, the units in the water are immune. They don't shoot in the water anymore. That's only during the specific amphibious landing phase. So we only have to worry about what's on the beach. So I'm just looking at my sheet to see where we have purple. And I will show you what I'm looking at. This is the only purple group that's firing on the beach. You can look from here all the way down. That's the only purple group that fires. Remember, black always fires, but we avoided that spot. So we can just go neener to black over here. Purple would fire and probably have a field day on us, except it was disrupted. So when you draw a color that is disrupted, he just loses his disruption marker, but he does not actually fire. Okay, so disruption marker gets removed, but our guys are safe. We did not take any damage. Now that the disruption marker is moved, when it's our turn and we do our movement actions, we have to be careful because he is now active again. These disrupted ones, we can sort of move around them or move towards them and have a little bit more flexibility because their field of fire is shut off while they're disrupted. This guy no longer has a shut off field of fire, but he's also not hitting us either. And then you can see that green and brown are going to hit us. And there's 2 issues there. When you look here, you can see green for sure is firing on this beach. And green is also firing on this beach over here. And then you can see brown is firing there. And so that's our issue. We're going to get hit several times. So we're going to start here. This green only has 1 unit. So we're going to take 1 hit. And that's where this card comes in handy. And I know my writing's not the best in the world. Intense zones get hit first, then steady. This entire stack is on an intense zone. So and we don't have to worry. There's no mixed situation here, but this stack is getting hit. Now within that stack, we're only going to hit 1 of those units. So now we have to decide which one. The closest, they're all tied. And then we go after the most steps. That's the next one. And then after that, we get to choose. So the HQ unit is immune, by the way. He cannot get hit unless the star is showing up on their symbol. So he can't get hit even if we wanted him to. It's one of these 2 units. and these two Utes. And so we have F and G. So it's just a crapshoot. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So we'll just hit F and be done with it. And so I'm going to grab step loss. Now here's the crazy part though. F takes a hit and he's disrupted. And remember, he can't get undisrupted unless this unit's removed. So that's sort of our challenge there. Now, I do need to look up the HQ stuff because somebody gets to remove undisrupted markers, and I think it might be heroes that do that, not HQs, but I'll look it up when we get to the right phase for that. But so yeah, we took a hit there, and now we're moving on. So the other green one is over here, and you can see it's the same deal. He's 1 unit, so he's going to do 1 damage, and we get to pick. It's either of these spots. They're both equidistant, so we're just picking 1 unit to take a hit. And I think, since this guy is already disrupted, we're going to hit one of these. So we'll hit this guy. And as we talked about before, that means he's disrupted. Now he is next to a disrupted Japanese unit. So that means he will be able to lose his disruption marker, because as long as he's disrupted, we're fine. It's only if it's an undisrupted Japanese unit like this one would cause problems. And in fact, he's going to, because he's the next one to hit us. And he's going to hit one of these two. This one's already been hit, so he's down to 3 steps. So it has to be one of these, because remember, he goes after the most steps. So I'm just picking whoever's on bottom. I guess we could sit there and do a deep dive on which shape is pulled most in cards and all that stuff, but I'm not doing that. So that's it for the Japanese attack phase. And we move on to the second event, which doesn't happen until game turn 7, and now it's the US phase. So we have to do it in this order. We can do naval gun and airstrikes. It has to be now before we do any other actions. That is very clear in the rule book. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we can do movement, and then there's a preservation move. We do combat, blah, blah, blah. There's this thing called close combat optional, and then close combat deliberate. Those are actually, they both get resolved the same way, but in Pelelu, close combat only happened until you had to do all your actions, and then close combat happened at the end. In this game, you can do close combat whenever you want, and you can do it before you finish your actions, in fact. And so, or you can wait until the end. It's your choice. And that's called deliberate close combat. That's what this is. And then here you have units that did not conduct a preservation move may undisrupt if they were not disrupted. And if you are disrupted, you can still, what was I going to say? You can still do a preservation move. That's what I was going to say. Okay. Now that's another weird thing, is this unit is not going to be able to undisrupt this turn, because you have to wait until next turn before you can undisrupt. It's the game turn. I'm pretty sure on that. It's a weirdness, because that's different than previous D-Day games, but I don't think you can undisrupt. Just making sure. Obviously, under the old rules, of course we could undisrupt. As long as it happened before our turn, we can undisrupt. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the remove a disruption part of the... This is crazy. Why can't I find stuff in this rule book? Here we go. 7.6, page 19. A U.S. unit with a disruption marker may not perform any action except remove their disruption marker or a preservation move. It's the last actions that you can do. And yeah, it's got this crazy odd even system. But basically what it's trying to say is if you get disrupted this game turn, you can't get undisrupted until next game turn. So that is a deviation from previous games. Before it was if you got disrupted during the US action phase, you couldn't undisrupt. But if the Japanese disrupted you, you could always undisrupt on your turn. So very different, and I don't need to explain the old rules. I'm just, the people who know the old games already know what I'm talking about. Okay, so in this game, we have a lot of actions available to us. First one is we all get a preservation move, which means we get off the beach, and you get to move 1 hex. We get to do a movement action, which I said is very complicated now, but we get to do one, and so bear with me on that. The next thing we get to do is a barrage, which is like suppression fire, if you will. Barrage can destroy artillery, and it also can destroy depth markers. It's actually a lot more powerful than it was in previous games. And then we can do an attack, and we can also do what's called close combat. And close combat is just a move into a space with a Japanese unit, and then you're doing hand-to-hand fighting. Okay, so now of all those things, there's rules on every one of those, and some of them are multiple pages long. So I don't want to bore you with going through it all at once, but let me just say it in a nutshell. Barrage is awesome in this game. However, you're not allowed to barrage anybody who's unrevealed, and every single unit is unrevealed right now. So the only way we can reveal a unit is to attack it. And I'm not talking close combat, because you're not allowed to close combat an unrevealed unit either. So in order to attack a unit, this is just like old D-Day rules. You must have an engineer or an infantry next to it, just at least one, okay? And then you can attack it. And then you can see here, that's a range 2, 8-2. 8 is its strength and 2 is its range. So as long as one unit next to him attacks, anybody else can join in. Now bear in mind that everybody only gets one action. So I can't join into this attack and also join into another one. But anybody else can join in, and even if you're 2 spaces away, you can join in, as long as one unit is next to it. And then these other units can join in if you're next to the unit. So let's say this guy here could join in because he's next to this unit, so he can do a range, right? This guy is not allowed to join in unless he's under the influence of an HQ, which they are. They're all under command. I think the HQ is, it's really, this game is a little confusing because you don't get an action in this game unless you're under command. And there's no way to be under command unless you have an HQ. So in previous games, you always had these action markers you could just give to anything. So it was a bigger deal to make sure you had to have an HQ around, and otherwise you couldn't participate in the attack. I think some of these rules are carrying over from previous D-Day games, but they're a little redundant or unnecessary. And unless I'm just misunderstanding something, but I don't see how this guy could move at all or do anything if he wasn't under an HQ, because there's no actions for him to have. So anyways, just understand that the rules do say he has to be under the influence of an HQ. So if we find a situation where he's not, he couldn't join in. All ranged units have to cut their strength in half. So if I were to attack with this guy, it would be 6, because remember that's a -2, right? So I would use 6 strength, and then this one would be 4 more. And so we do have to pay attention to the terrain, and there is a big terrain chart we have to look at. And for example, this thing is called a terrace, and the terrace basically says that we can move in, and tanks can move in, and there's no combat effect to it. So that's important. You always need to know what the combat effects are of the location you're trying to attack. And okay, so next, when you move, you can do what's called a 1 hex movement rule. And what that basically means is you get to move 1 hex. There's really not a lot of fuss. If you're moving, like for example, I'm next to this unit. If I try to move here, I'm doing what's called an infiltration move. So then I have to draw a card and have a gold and then whatever symbol this is, which is a diamond. If I get a gold and a diamond, then I take a hit. So actually I don't want that. But you're running a risk of taking damage if you move while you're already next to a Japanese unit. This first day, which is the first 6 turns of the game, you're allowed to move 2 spaces. If you, after the first day, then it goes up to 3. Now, there's all kinds of like things that stop you. So, for example, if you ever move next to a Japanese unit, for example, like if I move from here to here, I cannot move again. I have to stop. The other thing is if you run into field of fires, which is what all these dots mean, you have to stop. In the old games, it was intense field of fire stopped you. In this one, it's any field of fire stops you. So understand that. And I think the rule is any 2 new field of fires. We can look it up when we have to deal with it. Nobody's moving 2 spaces this turn, I don't think. So that's why I'm not worried about it right now. The next thing is there is rules for when you try to initiate into a space, position group that is occupied. I don't think I can just go in and take this. I think there's a chance for him to come actually move here and intercept me. I got to look that up again. That is a new thing. The other thing is there's this thing called movement under fire. It's called the muff rule. Now you have to look at their dots, which are on this. But basically, so this unit is firing all the way down onto the beach. He's firing like all the way out into the airport. And if you're trying to move, let's say like this, let's just imagine this guy's not there, and I'm moving across the airport, this guy is able to fire upon me every step of the way. And so you're actually drawing cards to potentially take damage. And it's not like an infiltration move. It's actually, they can hit you a lot easier. All they have to do is like match the color and they hit you. So it's pretty brutal. But there's something you can do. Like if I move next to him like this, okay, then his field of fire for muff is only 1 hex around him. So now I can move freely like this and he can no longer hit me. So you got to do these things where you can like distract him, and then that causes him to not be able to fire on us trying to move. If that didn't make sense, it will at some point. This is extremely new to this game, this muff thing, and there's a whole 2 pages in the rule book discussing this. There's a lot of if, then else's and counter ifs and all that other stuff involved. My promise to you is I will screw it up. But we're going to try to drive through it and get it as good as we can. And my guess is that we'll do a few, and then I'll learn, oh, I made a mistake here, or oh, I made a mistake there, and then we'll get better as this game goes. It's no big deal. So let's dive in and get some actions. All right, so The disrupted guys don't get to do anything. The number one thing we want to do is get these units revealed. We have naval gun and airstrikes, which is pretty cool, but they can't hit anything because it's called a barrage action, right? They can't barrage anything unless it's revealed. So we want to get as many units revealed as we can, and we want to occupy as much stuff as we can. So I'm going to look up real quick these position group rules. Like if I were to move into this space, does this guy attack me? I got to look that up. And then once I know that, we can get going here. All right, so most of our actions are going to be move. We're not doing close combat at all. And by the way, if you do an attack action, you can't attack and barrage the same space. You can't attack and close combat the same space. At least I don't think you can. That second one is the one I'm doubting myself on, but I don't think you can. So here we go. Movement limitations. A unit must end its move. There's a whole laundry list here. So obviously if you move 3 or 2 hexes, and your max move, you got to stop. If you're a non-tank unit and you entered a second field of fire hex, so if we're in like red's field of fire and now we're entering purple's, and if the Japanese are disrupted, it does not negate it. So even if the unit's disrupted, this is different from previous games. You're not allowed to just, frolic out in the field while the Japanese units can't fire at you. The unit moved, if you move next to a Japanese unit, it doesn't matter whether it's disrupted or not, you have to stop. If you trigger a movement under fire, attempting to leave a hex that has been disrupted by that fire, obviously you're disrupted, you can't move anymore. If you enter a Japanese occupied position to conduct close combat, if you enter a hilltop, rocky, or wooded hex, we'll talk about that. Let's do that right now. So obviously this is wooded, that's rocky, and a hilltop are those triangles that we always talked about. So it's usually these black spaces, which are nasty. Okay, and then tanks are not allowed to cross bluffs or cliff sides unless a road runs. A bluff, by the way, is actually right here. See, we have a bluff right at the start of the game. We're already encountering a bluff. Okay, so all right, so this sand here is called a terrace. This beach, this is all terrace terrain, and it needs to be bulldozed. It's not bulldozed yet, and it gets automatically bulldozed as the turns go on. But for now, we are restricted to just one movement anyways, because the sand is not smoothed out or whatever. At the end of the first day, it'll be bulldozed for tanks, and I think it eventually gets bulldozed for infantry a little bit earlier. Don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. But basically, for now, we're restricted to one movement. We always have the stacking penalties, so don't forget about that. Game turn 7, all beach hexes containing terraces will be bulldozed. And then on game turn 10, all terraces adjacent to a beach hex will be bulldozed. So that's the rule for that. I don't think there's any issue with occupying a position group. So let's talk about that. There's hex, this is a position, and then this is a position group. This unit is considered to be in both of these places at the same time when he attacks us. But when we're attacking him, he's only here. So this is free, and we can move in, and there is no retaliation on us for that. So that's good. I was getting a little frustrated that we were going to have to do all this crazy stuff just to enter a space. but we're going to be fine there. And if I missed it and I was on the right track but then just couldn't find the rule, I apologize. I will definitely correct it if I made a mistake there. Okay, you cannot move and attack, of course. It's one or the other. So let's go ahead and get started. This purple guy is active. He's definitely a problem. Oh, you know what? There is a rule. When you're in here, he has the ability to... Oh. Okay. Sorry. I know some of you are probably just want somebody who's really seasoned and knows how to play this game inside and out, and I'm not one of those people, and I apologize, but at the same token, I know there's no videos at all of this game, at least playthrough, and I'm trying my best to give you something that's going to be accurate and representative of how to play this. Okay, there is a weird rule about how they can attack Okay, here's what I'm looking at. This is the muff rule. So I know it's shaking around and it's blurry. Just give me a second here and I will. A U.S. unit that moves directly from an intense field of fire adjacent to an occupied, undisrupted Japanese position group into another intense field of fire projected from the same position group is subject to a form of muff called infiltration fire as the U.S. units. So it's just infiltration fire. That's all that is. If you're entering an empty Japanese position group hex that is linked to another hex of that position group occupied by an undisrupted Japanese unit, you must also undergo intense infiltration fire. So that's what I'm looking at. So we have to do what's called intense infiltration fire check. Now, an intense infiltration fire is worse than regular infiltration fire because intense means you just have to match the color and they hit you. So it's not color and shape; it's just color. Now, of course, I'm trying to find where the heck is the intense infiltration fire rule. Oh, this rule book is not always organized the way I would want it to be. So it says one fire card is drawn for each hex of movement that triggered muff, and any Japanese PGs with the indicated fire colors contribute in a normal fire fashion to that muff. So yes, it's exactly as I said. We're going to draw, and if we get the color, then he hits us. So we have what we need now to get started. My apologies. I know it seems like you've been just staring at nothing forever. First thing we want to do is we'll go from left to right. We want to reveal this. So we need to attack the snot out of it. This guy is disrupted. This one is not. So we're going to do an attack with this guy. You can see we have an HQ and a regular infantry. And then we can also attack with this guy, and I will. So we're going to just do an attack from both of these to here. So first thing you do is you reveal the unit, and you can see that it has an FL and a 2. The FL means that he needs to be flanked. These are weapon requirements necessary to defeat the unit. And then the 2 is the strength of the unit. So we don't have flank weapons. Flank means if I'm attacking from here, I need to skip space and then somebody else needs to be attacking from there. So any of these 3 spaces, if somebody was attacking from those 3 spaces, we would be flanking him. And as you can see, we're not satisfying that flanking requirement. Now in the old game, that would mean that he's just disrupted. So in the previous D-Day games, that would mean he's just disrupted. I can tell you by memory. You know, it's real easy because it's a chart you memorize. He would be disrupted, and then nothing else would happen. So then we would just have to move on to the next action. But in this one, there's actually a lot more involved. So let me get some of these initial rules out of the way for you. First thing you always want to look at is your weapons chart. So we're attacking with a 4-step infantry unit. And then we have an infantry that, 4-step infantry unit has all of these weapons, as you can see. They have a whole bunch. And then this guy here who was wounded, you have to look at his little step card here, and you can see that he's taken damage, and he has a Browning, a bazooka, and a radio. That's what that BR, BZ, and RD stands for. So he has those 3 weapons, but none of the other ones. So he started the game with all of them, and now he only has the Browning, bazooka, and the radio. Okay. By the way, the MG always counts as a Browning if somebody has the MG. Okay, so everybody has different things that they bring to the table. Our HQ unit brings a flamethrower and a mortar, but the point is there is no such thing as a flank. Nobody has a flank weapon. That's a physical thing you have to do. But what we do is we go to this US attack chart here. And first thing we have to do is we have to look up how much strength do we have versus how much do they have. Okay? So first step is you have to look at the terrain that he's in. He's in the that sand, which is what's it called? A terrace. He's in a terrace terrain. Okay, so if you look at the terrace, there's no combat effects. So the Japanese unit, nothing happens. You can see like certain ones change field of fire. There's other ones that cut your strength in half, but this one does nothing. Okay, so he has 2 strength, and that's it. Okay, so then we have to add up how much strength did we have. And so you can see here we have 3 plus 8 is 11, and that other guy didn't attack. And then this one is a 6 because he took a hit and he's at -2. So 11 and 6 is 17. So what's 17 divided by 2? That's 8 to 1, right? And so here you can see 3 to 1 is all the higher it goes. And well, yeah, so that would be 8 to 1. So anyways, we dominated this thing, right? So it's a Japanese unit that's alone. It doesn't have a depth marker, so it has a JE effect. However, we don't meet the weapon requirement for it. So then we have to go up 1. So this is if you meet the weapons, right? We don't meet the weapons, so now we have to go up 1 on the chart. So then we go to JD. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I mean, we're 8 to 1, not 3 to 1. Obviously, if we were 3 to 1, we would go to G. So here's why I'm pouting. JD means he gets disrupted and nothing happens. A JE is we defeat him. You see that? We defeat him. But maybe that was done intentionally. So you have to meet the weapons requirements to defeat him. So sneaky designer there. So it doesn't matter. We blew him out of the water, but the best outcome we can get is he's disrupted. So the outcome is exactly the same as in previous games. That's interesting. Okay, so he's disrupted, and that's it for us there. Now, we move on. So we got this unit here, and this guy's disrupted. So we can move, but we're only going to be able to move 1 space. So what we're going to do is we're going to get off the beach and go to here. And that allows us to attack either direction. And if you'll notice, we can now flank this guy, right? So that's super cool. Then this guy, it's the same deal. We're going to get off the beach and we're going to go after this red unit here. And then this guy, we are going to go right into the field. We're going to go into their spot and take it. And now we have to draw, we don't want to get purple. And we got purple. So he hits us. So that's unfortunate, and I'm just going to do like I've been doing before. I'm going to take a step loss on the unit on the bottom. And I think this is... Sorry. I need to see now, does he get disrupted? I don't see anything that indicates that he would be disrupted. He's an unrevealed Japanese unit, that is true, but I don't think he gets disrupted. It's an intense field of fire, which means he took a hit, which is worse than being disrupted. So, okay, so he doesn't get disrupted, I don't think. That is a good clarifying question to ask on BGG. Now, why am I always wondering if he gets disrupted? The Japanese fire chart says that if it's unrevealed, you get disrupted, but that's when they're firing. This is an infiltration check. Infiltration is not firing, so that's the reason why I'm making the rule determination that disruption requirement doesn't apply in this situation. Okay, so that's my understanding, and if you find anything in the rules that's different, then that means I was just inaccurate on that. And I'm trying to be as honest with you as I can when I'm trying to make a rule decision, and I'm not, convinced of it. So that's the situation there. Okay, so he's not disrupted, but we moved closer, and this guy can fire on us next turn, and it's not going to be pretty. Now, by the way, I'm looking at the dots here, and there is no field of fire on purple here. So we took fire going into it, but now that we're here, he can't hit us anymore. So actually, that's probably why the rules do that, because now we got a free shot at him next turn. That's pretty sweet. Okay, so now we got some other stuff here. So this guy is going to just move up like this and get in position to attack either way. And then we're going to do the same thing here. These two are going to attack him. So let's reveal. And this one is a 2, and it needs a mortar. And you can see we have a mortar right here on the HQ unit. And we blow him out of the water. I mean, 3, 8, 6, and then 8, or I'm sorry, 6 more. And remember, we only need to have 3 to 1. So we tripled him. So we triple him, and we actually meet his weapons requirements. He's as destroyed gets. Okay, so he is non-elite because he's got the white background. If this was filled in all the way, it would be an elite unit. So far, we haven't experienced an elite unit yet. Elite units can potentially go back in the game, but this guy is eliminated, and he's out of the game. We don't use him ever again. Now, remember how long setup took, or at least I do. Maybe you don't. This is Sector 2, so I'm putting him in the Sector 2 kill pile because I want to keep track of my my deaths here, because I don't want to have to sort those ever again. All right, so he died in Sector 2 because he was from Sector 2. Okay, so we destroyed this, and there is no advance after fire. So one of the things that I could have done, if I was smarter, is just attacked with one stack and then left this stack available to move, right? I didn't do that. So I'm already being maybe a little bit of a dummy. But this could potentially reinforce with a Japanese unit if an event or something occurs. So that's the risk we're running. You always want to be able to attack something and then take it. So we're leaving it open, and that's going to be a little bit risky. So now we move here, and this guy's already disrupted. So I'm actually going to follow my advice and only attack with this stack, and then this stack won't attack. So we're going to reveal. And you can see it needs an MG, and we have an MG with this. and we were at 8:16:19 to a 2. We blew it out of the water again, right? So it's destroyed, and we met the weapons requirement. So we destroyed that, and then we can take this guy and move him in. And so now we just took that spot. So that's awesome sauce. And that blue is under fire from this orange. We're attacking over a bluff. So even though he's in a terrain called terrace, we're attacking over a bluff. And so our strength is cut in half. So I still think we more than killed this thing. We had 3, 8, 16, 19. It's cut in half. So that's what, 8? And he had a 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8. I mean, we were still 4-1. So so we had no problem. And the same here. This guy had our strength was cut in half. So got to be mindful of that. And also any movement over one of these is just one space and then you're done. Okay, this is a disrupted unit and we can't undisrupt it. Remember how I said, not till next turn. And then this guy, we want to take out green, and I'm looking at the field of fire and there's no advantage really. But what we're going to do is we're going to get off the beach and we're going to go this way and position ourselves to take green. We are not in field of fire of anything else. It's only green that can fire into that spot. So that ends our turn, or action turn. And so now we do wave 2. And just so you know, there's an artillery phase and a raid phase and then an end of turn phase. These things don't happen. This doesn't happen until later. This doesn't happen until later. And then that, of course, we will do. So we got to land. Now, these guys can land in either this beach or this beach. We get to choose. This beach is full, so we're going to move these guys to red 1. These guys, I think were red 2 or yellow 1. We'll put them in red 2. These ones are yellow 1 or yellow 2. I'm going to put them in yellow 1. And then this one was blue 1 or yellow 2. They're bad either way, but I'm going to put them in blue 1. See, now the risk here is if I draw a green, one of them's taking a hit. But let's try it. We're going to start with red 1. I drew a blue, and blue is active. So we take a hit on circle. And sure enough, our engineer took a damage. And then both of them can land. And you can have a stack of 4. So I'm going to land them right on top of this infantry unit right here. So we have a tank, an engineer, and an infantry all together. Because remember, as long as you land, as long as it's a tanker and an engineer, you can go up to 4. Your limit is 2 infantry units. Okay, so this next one is a brown, and brown is firing. He hits diamond, and it's almost like they knew, because we just took another damage, and they both land. And I'm going to put them here. Now these tanks and engineers, they're not with a particular battalion, but they're with a particular division. And so they do have to stay with their own division in order to be under control. Here it's a brown, and this brown, though, is eliminated. So nobody takes any damage, and they're going to land here and get fat and happy with these guys. So here you see we have an HQ and 2 engineers and then 2 of those. And then we're going to move to here. I drew a blue, and there is no blue. We eliminated them. So they are going to land, and I'm going to put them right on this disrupted unit, like so. Actually, no, I'm going to put them here out of the hopes that these guys will land on top of it. Okay, so that ends turn 1. How was that? I think if I don't have to explain the rules so much, we're going to get through this a lot quicker. Trust me, the turns will go quicker. Some of these rules are new to me too, so I apologize if you're frustrated with how slow it's going, but I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found this helpful. We landed, and now we're going to move to turn 2. And before I end this video, we will take care of turn 2, which I was supposed to do, by the way, here. Place the unit scheduled to arrive next turn. I was supposed to do that in phase 1, and I didn't. And please accept my apologies for that. I always forget every time I do these games. So how do we know what is landing? So what you got to do is you got to look at the reinforcement chart. This is the reinforcement chart for scenario 6. And right here you can see game turn 2 is the 3rd Battalion, 27th Regiment on R1 and R2. Okay, so I got to go over here. Holy cow, I just knocked all my pieces everywhere. That's not cool. All right, so 3rd Battalion, 27th Regiment. Here they are. And so they're going to land on either red 1 or red 2. I'm not sure I have a preference. There's 3 infantry and an HQ. So I'm going to... I think I'm just going to put them on red 2. All of them, because I don't think they have as much chance to get hit there. Okay, so I'm at 57 minutes. I want to check a few rules so I don't get too deep in this and lead you astray. And I will be back in a few minutes. I'm having a good time. We finished turn 1, and we're ready to start turn 2. Thanks for watching and joining me at the table. Stay awesome.